gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to Nerd Fights! The ultimate showdown where geek culture collides with unfiltered opinions and passionate debates. I'm your host, Mr. Know-It-All, bringing you the latest and greatest from the world of movies, TV shows, and all things nerdy. But hold on to your warp cores because the real captain of this starship is none other than Salty Trekker. So strap in for a wild ride because we've got Agatha All Along and the Penguin, which both dropped in the same week. You don't want to miss it. That means only one thing. It's time to fight. Nerd Fights. What's up, all my salties and know-it-alls out there in the world? How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Nerd Fights. I'm, of course, Mr. Know-It-All. Joining me is the Salty Trekker. We are going to do this thing. We have so many fun things that have dropped this last week. We have both Agatha, which dropped 2 episodes, and then we have Penguin, which came out with an amazing episode. Lots of fun stuff to talk about. But Salty, first, how was your weekend, man? How's your week been? What's going on?
I'm tired.
There we go. Okay.
Although I did, so the wife.
Calm down. He's like, bring that volume down a little bit.
The wife and I did go to see Don't Let Go. I think the title of that movie should be changed. It should be called "Is Halle Berry Crazy?"
Okay, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm glad. No, I'm down. Please, by all means, if you want to do a quick little short. Hey, what's going on, Benny?
Yeah, the quick spiel on it is, and it. Look, am I going to recommend this movie? Depends.
By the way, Thomas, because he absolutely needs a picture behind him. Go on.
Yeah, I know. We're working on that. I'm trying to get things arranged. But the basic premise of the movie, if you've seen the trailer, you already know. Halle Berry and her 2 sons are living in a cabin in the woods, where, of course, in movies, nothing ever goes wrong when you're living in a cabin in the woods.
Yeah, true.
And for some reason, Halle is teaching her kids that there's this evil in the woods, and if you set foot outside of the cabin without a rope tied around you, the evil can get you.
Really? So it's a little Bird Box-ish like that?
Yeah.
Remember
so
that with Sandra Bullock? They had to. It was.
I haven't seen Bird Box, but I know.
Watch it. It's so good. It's one of those. What do you call it? Not Apocalypse, but the one where with Bruce Willis, there was 2 Meteor movies that came out the same year. Same thing.
Bird Box came out at
Armageddon. Right. Bird Box came out at the same time as A Quiet Place, so it was one of those really weird. You must be quiet.
One was about listening, and one was about seeing, and
Yes.
Yeah. So
anyway, go on.
Yeah. So basically, we set up that premise pretty much as you see in the trailers. The real question becomes: is there really an evil in the forest, or is Halle Berry just crazy? And now that's actually, because this is not a horror film. This is a suspense film.
Got it.
Okay. And you're really wondering, is this a small family trying to survive in this weird post-apocalyptic nightmare, or is this an abusive, psychotic woman who is doing horrible things to her children?
So funny enough, this movie actually had a little bit of a problematic production in that once it was finished, they've been trying to find a distributor, and nobody, probably because I feel like there was issues with how do you package this, how do you present this in a way that makes sense.
Right.
They had a distributor, they lost it. It was actually supposed to come out, I want to say it was supposed to come out in 2023. And then because that distribution law fell through, and then they were stuck with trying to figure out how to get it out somewhere. Right. But
the 2 boys are really good. The movie has a little bit of pacing issues midway through. They spend a little, like I was into the "is Halle Berry crazy" part, but they spent too much time on the how they survive stuff. Like they spend entire sequences of them like scraping bark off of trees and collecting bugs, and one kid kills a squirrel, and they're trying to keep food supply going and stuff like that.
Sure.
And so way too much of the film is focused on their survival techniques, and not enough about the "is Halle Berry crazy part.
Stanley says sounds like a film school screenplay project.
It actually, in some ways, it's ambitious like a film school film. Now, as we get through the film, there are hints dropped that Hallie is crazy, and there are hints dropped that maybe there really is something out there. And they do a good job, and this is very hard to do these days. They do a good job leaving it pretty ambiguous in that you don't know when you're getting towards the climax of this film, and even going through the climax of this film, you're not 100% sure if Halle Berry is crazy or if there's some kind of evil in the woods. Except, and this is what pisses me off and ruined the entire film for me, it would have probably gotten about an 8 out of 10, but I would drop it to a 6 out of 10, being generous. And that is because at the very, very, very end of the film...
Oh, we're just going to... Go ahead. We're just going for it. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm just going to say, at the very, very end of the film, like the last shot in the entire film, they give you the answer.
Wow. So this is literally the definition of stay till the end. You won't regret it.
Well, no, I do regret it because I think the film would have been far better if you were walking out with your significant other or whatever going, wow, do you think she was crazy? Or do you think there really was something out there?
Oh, I feel you.
You know, but instead
but
you
actually left the question mark open.
Right. You could have cut 10 seconds out of this movie and you would not have known.
Right on.
And that was the biggest mistake of the film, because once they show you the answer, it's like, okay, well, I guess, you know, and it's not like Sixth Sense where it's some big shocking revelation. You know, either she's crazy or there's an evil force in the woods. You know, and so there's only those two. There's only two possibilities here.
Right.
And so I like the idea of walking away from the film genuinely not knowing.
That's fair. No, that's
and unfortunately they just didn't have the balls to stick to it, and so they had to give it up. Biggest question: why was someone out of uniform in the picture with Pike? Good question. Why is that, Mr. Know-It-All? And thank you so much, Thomas, for the $4.99 super chat.
So you're talking about mine. Where am I in the picture? Yeah. We had ours with us. My problem
yes, your wife was in uniform in the picture.
My problem was your outfit looked so far superior, so I wasn't going to wear my Strange New Worlds one. On screen, I can fake it because you see this much of me. I can get away with it.
Right.
But then, so I didn't know where the other one. I decided I was just going to rep for one of our brands, and was like, whatever. Because all weekend long, I was interchangeable between Mr. Know-It-All gear, NERDFIGHTS gear, and then actual Star Trek shirts. So it was one of those things where I was like, you know what?
I never saw you in a Star Trek shirt, but I did see you in Know-It-All gear and NERDFIGHTS gear.
Right on. Speaking of which, NERDFIGHTS gear is available. We have an Amazon link, which I will absolutely send and post into the description of this video once we're done.
And so, yeah, but yeah, Mr. Know-It-All was a complete jerk at the con. However, you know, like I said, I can now die a happy man.
You guys planned that.
Huh?
I thought you guys planned that.
Yeah.
You're like, as soon as the show starts, make sure you call him out.
No. Thomas has been complaining to me for a while now about it.
Really?
Yes.
I have my uniform. I wear my uniform all the time.
And I got that shirt just for the convention. I mean, I
look good.
And my wife's too.
Between you and Bridget, you guys look good. I was like, right on, man.
But yeah, but I can die a happy man now because Anson Mount, of course, said that I have better hair than Pike. So,
which, by the way, I am so amazed and stoked. Like, that was the greatest thing ever. Yeah. Like, seriously, it was amazing. And by the way, I want to talk more about this stuff, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I want to jump into the one and start kind of get us into the shows, because the sooner we get through them, the sooner we get to that open discussion at the very end. Don't forget, everybody, if you have a lot of questions or things you want to talk about specifically, by all means, throw them in the comments. We'll keep track of them, and then at the we'll talk throughout the thing, of course, but we want to literally just go off the rails the last 45 minutes to half hour or so, so we can actually just kind of do this thing up and mix it up nice for you guys. But first, the weekend began with the, or for me anyway, began with the Agatha All Along show. When I
So
first,
the weekend begins for you on Wednesday?
oh my God, so much.
What kind of schedule do you?
In terms of like having to get ready to watch stuff and the whole thing, Wednesdays through Saturday are usually my quote unquote watching stuff days because
Right.
nothing good comes on Tuesdays and Wednesdays unless of course it's binging, or Tuesdays and Thursdays, or Tuesdays and Wednesdays rather, unless it's binging something that just drops from a previous week. But so the premise of the show is pretty simple. It's the continuation from WandaVision. It stars Kristen Hahn or whatever, yeah, as Agatha Harkness, who is waking up due to the untimely demise of Wanda during the events of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Spoilers if you haven't seen that movie, okay? And so what is she dealing with? And it actually opens up pretty interestingly with, well, first off, what are your first impressions?
Okay, so I got to correct you on one thing though, is that's the assumption was that she was waking up because Wanda Maximoff is dead. But remember, we find out later that someone else broke the spell.
So yes, but that only happened because it was already starting to weaken.
Right. But I'm just saying, it wasn't. She didn't just wake up because Wanda was dead. Someone else still had to, quote unquote, rescue her. And I thought, okay, so I thought it was really interesting because when the show started, it felt like this was just the next episode of WandaVision because we were in another fake TV show. Now we're in a police procedural, much like Twin Peaks kind of thing.
Sure.
And except that Agatha is now the main character instead of Wanda.
Right.
And I was wondering, okay, so are we going to get a few episodes of weird TV shows again, or are they just doing that now? Fortunately, they just did it for the first episode. I think it would have been a little bit much if they did it half a season like they did with WandaVision of show after show after show,
right.
Where we're all going, come on, what's really going on? Because
so the thing is, I feel like I saw another critic who talked about there being it felt like they were trying to do that. I'm like, this was never supposed to be WandaVision 2.0. I never thought that, never assumed that, but they had to. And people even said the first episode started slow, and I'm like, what do you? The first episode
of any show is going to start out slow,
but it also gave us the premise, which is that for the last 3 years, she's been living in this weird until literally when she's naked because she's stripped off all of the fakeness around her and she's strictly Agatha. She goes to the neighbor and the neighbor's like, "Yeah, you've always been kind of weird, but we sort of just like whatever." You know, they're all nice neighbors. Who's like, she's the weird lady who lives over there, and I thought that was interesting in and of itself, and it set the premise well. It's such a weird idea that I don't know what people were expecting. But I like the show genuinely, and I fully intend.
Well, I have to say I was a little disappointed that we find out midway through the second episode that she and the other witches go to outer space and start a coven of lesbians.
There is. I hate you. Stanley says, but it seemed like things had started to go wrong with her delusions after Wanda died. Yes, it does, Stan. I absolutely agree with you. Right. I do think that's the case as well.
Well, I think,
He goes on to also say, obviously, the others shoved her out of it a little clearer, and I agree with that too. One of them, for very selfish reasons, being Aubrey Plaza's Rio Vidal. Rio Vidal, I say in air quotes because there's firm belief she's actually somebody else. Or other people she could possibly be.
Oh, who do people think she is?
Some people think she is Mrs. Know-It-All says coven of lesbians. That's hysterical. But so I believe some people think she's either going to be Mephisto. Some people think because of the Blackheart comment, she's going to be Blackheart. Some people think the team is going to be Blackheart because he mentioned something about it. And Blackheart is the son of Mephisto. And then a couple people think that she's to be Morgan Le Fay, which is another character from the comics, also more popular from mythology, Arthurian mythology.
Your audio is cutting out all of a sudden.
Sorry, not sure why that is. I don't know what's going on.
Now it's better. Maybe when you put up your hands, like you blocking between your mouth and the mic.
I think you're right. I think it's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So I would say that I would think the teen is more likely to be Mephisto than her.
I genuinely wish Mrs. Know-It-All was on this with me today, but because Stan asked a great question. I just don't understand all the different types of witches. So I mentioned it briefly in my review. The wife and I were, when we were in developing TV series, one of the series we were going to develop was a show called
Stop
Crafters.
putting your hands in front of your face.
Sorry, one of the shows we were going to develop was a show called Crafters, and the premise was it's about witches, and you had to really dig deep into the lore. And there are actually, when it comes to beyond Wiccan mythology, which is the actual quote unquote religion, there's actually a greater mythology which comes from a lot of different places where quote unquote witches, the legend of witches and the lore of witchcraft stem from.
Yes.
And so there's all different types. We've hyperbolized it with, and a good example would be the Wizard of Oz with there's dark witches and then there's light witches like Glenda, and there's all these different things, but there genuinely are in quote unquote witch lore different spheres, if you will, when it comes to specialties and areas. And
right.
So that's
I was going to say, it's not so much that there's different types of witches as much as there's different types of magic. It's kind of like if you've ever played an RPG game where you are a sorcerer or a wizard or a witch. You basically choose what types of magic. Like if you specialize in fire magic, you'll be able to cast a super powerful fireball, but you're not going to be able to hit somebody with ice shards very well. If you specialize in cold magic, you'll be able to rip them apart with ice shards, but you'll suck at fireball. So
there you go. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and so so with this, they specifically say to walk the road, you need to get a witch from each element, a witch who specializes in each element.
Areas. Yeah.
Yeah. And Agatha, her specialty is power absorption. So
that's her own. She got that ability from her original walk down the road.
Right.
And the level of power she had to start with.
Right. But since Wanda drained all of her power, she basically has no power unless another witch hits her and she absorbs it. Which is interesting. So
real quick, Mrs. Know-It-All wanted to punch in and said that what you said is absolutely true about the needs and all that stuff. However, witches are called to their type of craft. My wife's very big into witch lore. Very, very big.
I didn't know your wife was a witch.
Very big into witch lore.
Yeah.
And so, yes. But it's funny, a lot of interesting knowledge-based stuff there, especially for me as a writer. It's so interesting to kind of mine that creative space. It's pretty much what Disney's done over the years with mining old fairy tales. Right. Well, being able to go into folklore, you find some really cool stuff. Everybody wants to stop at Dracula, but there's actually infinitely great vampire lore out there you could play with.
Speaking of which, have you seen the new trailers for Nosferatu?
Yes.
Holy crap, that looks good.
Good. I actually really want to see that.
Yeah, so funny. Every time when we went to the theater, that trailer came out. I was like, "Oh, what a great Christmas movie!" Because it's coming out this Christmas.
So, anyway. Thomas, I have not been able to get Mrs. Know-It-All to sit down long enough to watch Harry Potter with me. We've actually talked about it several times, and that's not a criticism. We have a million other things to watch.
You have to understand why Thomas is asking. You see, a former co-host of mine, Matthew. Was very, very outspoken about how Harry Potter creates Wiccans.
Really? With its cartoonishly Latin attempt at fake spells, you fell for that, or the like magical.
You know how some of the so-called religious right freaked out about Harry Potter when the movies started coming out.
Oh, no, absolutely! Oh my gosh, so much.
So he was on board with that.
Creeps, I love it. I mean, it was Follow the Yellow Brick Road, and Han is no Judy Garland, but it wasn't horrible. Okay, so it's so funny. During the show, I looked over and said to Mrs. Know-It-All, "Are you catching the aspersions toward Wizard of Oz-ish imagery? There's a road. There's clearly I know that we're going to actually get." Because we've seen it in the trailers, a visual gag with someone with a green face and someone in a Glenda-ish outfit, and so there's definitely a lot of areas there which I thought are interesting.
Right. And I think it's an interesting premise.
Bradley. I will do that. I promise.
Go
on.
they genuinely, I think, have an interesting setup here.
I think so too.
And so I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm curious to see who, but I have a couple of issues with it. One issue I'll save because it's the same issue I have with the Penguin. So I'm not going to comment on that for right now. But the primary, the first thing that kind of jumped out at me that I really don't like is it seems like they're setting up a confrontation between these witches and the Salem Seven.
So I don't even know who the Salem Seven are.
The Salem Seven are in the comics, and
which is crazy because I'm a comic guy and I didn't know that. So good for you, sir.
Well, and I don't know a lot about them. I only have one. I think only one specific comic with them in it, and it's an issue of the Fantastic Four. And so, and for those that don't know, and this is kind of what peeved me about all this, is okay. Agatha was not a villain in anything I've read from the comics. Now, I understand she's gone back and forth. I get that.
Yeah, she's predominantly seen as an ambiguous anti-protagonist.
An ambiguous anti-protagonist. Man, you sound like you're trying to come up with new pronouns here.
Because she's very in the comics. It's funny. This version of her right now that she feels the closest to what her personality is like in the comics, in that she's very selfish, but she'll do and get involved with unselfish things, at least on its face. But at the end, you find out it's because she actually wanted a thing. So she'll help good guys get her end.
But you see, I don't know what comics you've read with Agatha in them.
Several Doctor Strange. She's in the Doctor Strange.
I only have a couple of comics with Doctor Strange even in it, and I never subscribed to Doctor Strange's source.
I didn't either, but when this show was coming out, I looked up. Okay, I'm gonna be fair. I listened to all of the Comics Explained comic books about it, and dug into one of them. Interested me, and I dug it out and found online a digital copy and was able to read it just to better understand it, the character, where she comes from. What's funny is this iteration, everybody complained during WandaVision, where she doesn't look anything like Agatha. This one, it does look like Agatha. She's got the white blouse. She's got the blue jacket.
I still don't know. She's dressed like Agatha.
Correct.
But she doesn't look like Agatha to me.
So I believe firmly by the end of all this, she's going to get the white hair. I believe she might even find herself cursed and become an older lady. But either way, I'm genuinely behind this version of things.
Right. Now, if this Agatha becomes the Agatha that I know, I'll be a little more satisfied, but we'll see what happens. But you see, okay, so the Agatha that I know is what's the word when you're not
the au pair?
Yeah. She's Franklin Richards' nanny.
Yes.
And so
that's how she was introduced.
Right. And so she works literally for Reed and Sue Richards, the Fantastic Four. And takes care of their son when they're out on missions. And like I said, one of the first comic books I ever purchased on my own was the Fantastic Four. Agatha is kidnapped from the Baxter Building. The Fantastic Four go to Salem to rescue her from the Salem Seven.
As one does.
Yes. And so it's so funny because it's like, as this starts out, it's like, what would be perfect is by the last episode of the Fantastic Four going to show up and help out, which we know is not going to happen, but that would be awesome if it did. But the Salem Seven, while they are occultish, they are not witches.
No, right, and I think that's kind of where Agatha crossed them. And so they're going to punish. But they're like kind of witch policey in this show,
right?
Like somehow they're the ones who police up witchcraft.
At least in the comics that I have, the Salem Seven are like an evil version of the Fantastic Four, except there's 7 of them, and so they each have a unique and different power, but it's not really described as being witchcraft or anything. So, like, one of them can shoot water, which is a perfect foil to Johnny Storm. One of them has like snakes for arms and legs and stuff, which is weird. But that makes him a good analogy for Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so stuff like that. So they're weirdly powered villains.
Yeah, I could see that, almost more elemental based. And again,
Right. Well, the Fantastic Four are elemental based as well. You just
what are they? Are they just called the Salem Seven because it was a clever alliterative name back in the day?
I think so. Yeah. Just like there was the
Senator.
Sinister Six.
But do they have an actual connection to Salem?
Yes, they are. They're headquartered in Salem, Massachusetts.
But were they like? Where did? I want to know more now.
I know, but I don't. The problem is, I don't have every appearance of the Salem Seven. I have when they showed up in the Fantastic Four. So I don't know their origin or anything like that. But
it's fun to see them dealing with it now.
Yeah. So I'm curious, but the thing is that this Salem Seven that we see just looks like another coven. I mean, it's a bunch of people in robes.
They look the same though. Like they've got some, like it's different. I think they're more. I think you're right. I think they're much more cultish than Witch is. And so I don't know. I think it's an interesting thought to look at. What were your what are your overall thoughts about the beginning of the show, the setting, where we're going, and what do you think is to come?
Well, that's the real trick. Like I said, I do think that eventually we're going to get some kind of battle royale with the witches versus the Salem Seven.
Okay.
And I do think that Mom from that '70s show is going to be a witch by the end of this.
So Mrs. Know-It-All firmly believes that she is actually, or either whether she's not been called or she doesn't know how to answer, but she thinks she's a witch, like you read about, and she didn't know it. Or this was at the beginning. So even though she's the oldest of them, she's the youngest of them in actuality. Older than real life, you know what I mean? Like she's the youngest being called to the craft, so to speak.
Right.
I think it's interesting.
And Josiah, so real quickly, since you mentioned this, and I know we always go off on these tangents. So Mr. Fantastic, I'm assuming you mean rubber, not robber. And then there's Invisible Woman. And you're like, are you asking like how are they elements? They are based on earth, wind, fire, and water. Earth is the thing, who is literally made of rocks. Yep. Wind is actually Sue. The wind is invisible, and the wind can push you like a force field does. So Sue is the representation of wind. Fire is obviously Johnny Storm. I mean, he's the Human Torch.
I guess it's obvious.
And Reed is water in that he has no actual shape, just like water doesn't. And so that's how they kind of came across. That's how they developed their powers, was to do the 4 basic elements and turn them into people.
So Stanley says one will find her courage, one will find her brains, one will find her heart. You joke. I kind of dig that.
Yeah.
Especially if we're using all this Wizard of Oz-y.
Well, the boy would need his courage. He's definitely the cowardly lion.
Sure. I could. Yeah.
As far as the heart, I would say, what's her name that hates Agatha so much?
Yeah, I can see that too.
Brains would be Agatha herself.
You think?
Because Agatha she's acting on impulse and emotion, not on intellect. And that could be what ultimately, if the goal is to make Agatha into a genuine MCU protagonist, right?
Oh God, I don't really.
Well, like Agatha in like she could be someone who is adjacent to Doctor Strange and stuff like that. That she would be a character that would help being basically a good witch.
Okay.
And if that is.
What if they reverse the idea? What if they give her instead of having her start with the Fantastic Four, because clearly they're only showing up, what if she shows up as the end credit scene, knocking on the door? Hi, I'm answering the nanny request for a nanny. That would be awesome.
Oh, at the Fantastic Four's house.
That would be so cool.
That would be really cool. But unfortunately, that would be the post-credit scene to end all post-credit scene. Because
really
she knocks on the door and Pedro Pascal opens the door and says, "Oh, you must be here about the nanny position," and then cut to black.
Because you notice she looks like psychotic Mary Poppins with the jacket and the whole bit. She's channeling Mary Poppins all day as well.
And they did say Franklin is going to be in the Fantastic Four movie.
Yes, I know. I'm
So
so
they
excited
could
for it.
totally pull that up. I could see
Yeah.
a post-credit scene from the final episode having her knock on the door, and then Pedro Pascal answers the door, and just a quick line about, "Oh, you're here about the nanny position." You know,
Oh my
that
gosh.
that
And oh, you're about to answer. Yes, I'm here to blah, blah, blah. And then they cut to her, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
done. Oh my goodness. That'd be so great. So, all right. What are your thoughts? Let's go ahead and,
All right, so I'm curious, which is what the first couple episodes, if you're going to drop 2 episodes at the
yeah,
beginning,
yeah.
they did a good job in that. If it would have just dropped the very first episode, I would have been like, oh, this is just another season of WandaVision. So I'm glad that they dropped 2, because the second episode really gets into what they're going to do, what their end game is, what their goal for the next 6 episodes is.
I will say I think this is a much better use of their time than the Acolyte. And then before we all get into the Acolyte jokes, what I mean is this was only it was I think the credits
Less
started.
lesbianism.
See, there you go. The credits started at like 35 minutes, 37, whatever, 35, 37 minutes. But I still felt like they packed a lot of story that made and they went somewhere fast in that first hour or in that first 45 minutes or whatever.
Right.
And then you go into the second episode, and the second episode was right about that same time frame, and same thing. They gave us a bunch of stuff. You saw character development. They laid the seeds of who Wiccan might be. I'm calling him Wiccan. It's the kid who I believe that's who he is from the comics. But
Wiccan, though, is Wanda Maximoff's son.
Correct. So how did
So
he get
you think that's Wanda Maximoff's son?
I think there's every possibility that's exactly who it could be, because they have to set. He does show up eventually. He comes from somewhere because he's in the comics. He exists. He's actually part of the Young Avengers. So it's like, how do you?
Yeah, but the Young Avengers, rumor has it, has been canceled by the MCU.
Rumor has it until it's confirmed by Marvel, who is far more intelligent than Star Wars for not just putting out this is canceled. They're like, you know what?
Let's just be quiet about it.
Let's not talk about it. It's okay. You know what I mean? We'll just go on. Let people think it's in development hell for whatever. But like Blade,
Yeah.
very conspicuously like Blade.
Which I love the fact that Ryan Reynolds is now trying to get a new Blade movie with,
Let's go.
with Wesley Snipes.
Yes.
So
So yeah, I think I believe it's funny. I said this in my review with Mrs. Know It All. I firmly believe Agatha has not changed all of her things, and if anybody thinks she's going to be quote unquote rehabilitated, I think she's out for what she's out for. She may find value in the sisterhood of the Yaya, whatever, but I feel like the truth is she needs to. I think she's going to sacrifice at least 1 or 2 of them before she realizes that's the wrong approach.
Right.
And something also, there's allusions to her having to have sacrificed a kid. Remember, first thing that what's her face, the lady who's bound, the black bald witch lady who's in the apothecary type shop selling edible candles. She says to her, "Another child sacrifice," and I was like, "Wait, what?"
well,
And
let's
then-
not forget, in WandaVision, she killed all the other witches in her coven,
Right.
including her own mother.
And she went down the road. We now learn at some point or another, the road must exact some kind of sacrifice, almost like the Soul Stone. How like, yeah, you want all this power we're going to give you? Cool. What are you giving us in return?
Right.
Something
And that's also probably how she got her hands on the Darkhold.
Yes, I agree with that all day.
Yeah. So, I do think it's does what an intro to a show should do. It's got me interested. It's not, fortunately, while you can see it's connected to the MCU, they're not just trying to sell a bunch of other MCU stuff, which I think they're finally, I think Marvel's, finally realizing that that's not such a great thing to do constantly.
I agree. Spike says, I appreciate both shows. They're very different from one another and scratch different itches. I think I'll keep watching both for now. Good for you, Spike. So am I. We have a rule in my house. We give most things 3 episodes. Unless it's like reprehensibly bad, I give it 3 episodes to figure out if I'm into it or not. I'm with you. This first episode, and we'll get into the next Penguin in a moment. Yeah. But all right, so what is your ultimate? Do you have a score of any kind?
I don't, because I think a serialized show like this is going to be scored as a singular extended movie. That's how I kind of do it.
Okay, that's fair.
You know,
That's
I can't, because the problem is if this episode is an 8, this episode is a 6, and then the ending just sucks, you know, or whatever. And it's like, well, retroactively, I got to change all my scores now, you know. So I just wait until I can see the whole thing. And so Creep, as far as Doctor Strange is well, in the comics, he's the Sorcerer Supreme. In the movies, he's, you know, he's technically the world's greatest sorcerer, but Wong is the Sorcerer Supreme on the technical.
For 5 years, Strange was gone.
Right. So but all that being said is the Sorcerer's job is to protect Earth from mystical attack. Yeah. So if Agatha broke bad, it would be up to Doctor Strange and Kamar-Taj to stop her. But that's assuming she breaks bad. And so if she doesn't break bad, and this is where I honestly, I think and I hope that the show goes, is by the end of the show, I want Agatha to be a genuine hero character so that she can become Franklin Richards' babysitter, and we can move and maybe get involved in, you know, other stuff that happens later on when they need someone to talk to about magic, you know. So I would rather see that than to have her just continue to be an antagonist, because guess what? Scarlet Witch is coming back.
Yeah, and most recently in an interview for something else, she was asked, talking about Elizabeth Olsen, was asked about whether or not she would come back, what it would take, this and that. And for the first time, because for the longest time she's been like, well, I mean, whatever, we'll see, this and that. Now she was very specific. She was like, if they found a way to make it make sense, I really would love to come back. You know, if the story was like, she's saying very specific things where in the past she's been kind of cagey. So that tells me either A deal was made and now she's not allowed to say anything yet, or B, she's on the verge of having, or she's having conversations and is like, hey guys, if you want me to remotely take you seriously, these are my terms. You need to make it make sense.
But Scarlet Witch, honestly, I gotta say, I think Doctor Strange 2 is way too underrated, because yes, the post-Endgame MCU really faltered because it didn't have direction. But I don't think Doctor Strange 2 was one of the bad movies. And in fact, I think Scarlet Witch was a great villain.
I don't think Multiverse of Madness was bad. I think what it suffered from was unreasonable fan expectations.
Right.
There was everyone for the months building up to it.
They were expecting it to all be about the multiverses.
Yeah, they were acting like it was going to be another Endgame with this character and all these other people and all this stuff. And actually, I have a friend of mine who's a leaker who did say back then he was just getting into it. The confusion was they were getting reports of stuff that was going to end up being in Spider-Man Homecoming or No Way Home, and nobody was corroborating one way or another. So that's why everybody was like, they're going to have old characters from past things and this and that. And you didn't start getting that until
and this is not a $1 billion budget movie. Yeah, you know, so you know, and that's people forget that. But I think that and the funny thing is, in preparation for a show that never happened because someone whose name rhymes with Schmolet Ball didn't show up, you know, I tend to think of something. I don't know. But
the weirdest to know. I got you.
Bullet ball. I don't know. But someone didn't show up when we were going to a week before this dropped talk about what our expectations were. Sure. I watched the week before every single thing that Scarlet Witch appeared in.
Okay.
And I watched it chronologically. And so starting with Age of Ultron, and Civil War, Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame, and WandaVision, and Doctor Strange 2.
Copy.
And you watch all that back to back, and Wanda's arc makes perfect sense. It really does. It's just that the problem is people think she's a hero. Why is she suddenly the villain in Doctor Strange? Okay. You weren't paying attention to her changes in Endgame. You weren't paying attention to the way she became a hero in Age of Ultron. She was never, a Captain America-esque hero. right?
No, but at the same time, I do feel the one. If there's a downside, I feel like it's that at the end of WandaVision, you felt like a lesson had been learned. You felt like she traveled somewhere. You felt like she had gone over through an arc, and then to suddenly find her where she's at in Multiverse of Madness, I felt like I'd missed a chapter of a story because what pissed her off again? Like, what are we talking about? Where did that happen?
Well, I think here's where I think the mistake with WandaVision was, because rewatching it, I get, because remember, everybody in Westview was absolutely horrified at what Wanda had done to them at the end of that series, right?
Let's she mind
she mind raped them for months, and so yeah, absolutely. And she didn't realize it, but she was causing them physical pain while doing it.
Right.
But I think the problem is, and honestly, while I like her character in other stuff, it was Photon's fault, Monica Rambeau. Because she's the one that says, "Oh, they'll never understand what you sacrificed." BS! She sacrificed her make-believe family.
Yeah.
And so that should not have been in that show. Instead, she should have said something like, you have to understand, these people have been your prisoner for the last several months.
And I'm sitting here going, okay, let's be real. Let's call a spade a spade. Monica, this town, we're her slaves.
Yes.
That's not okay.
Right, but she was trying to make it off like, oh, because you gave up having Vision and your make-believe kids, that somehow your sacrifice is on par with all of them being forced into this by her,
Yeah,
and so that's where
the
the problem is.
That idea, not what you said. What you said is dead on.
Yeah, and so I think that if you can kind of realize that was really the mistake, because what's the last thing we see? We see her living in isolation and studying the Darkhold.
I do remember that. That.
And then we go from that to Multiverse of Madness, where Doctor Strange goes to her where she's living in an isolation, and then he discovers she's been studying the Darkhold.
Real quick, Bradley, I just got this. I was waiting because I texted somebody, but I put your question up. Are y'all going to watch the new Wild Robot movie and review it? I actually have a friend of mine who has gotten out of the review game, but he still gets the screener links. He may or may not have one for this coming.
Oh, I hate you.
And he said if he does, he'll send it to me because he doesn't have any intention of watching the movie. I don't know that I'll go to a theater and watch it, but if I get an early,
I want to see it. I actually do.
I'll watch and do a review on my channel, and then we can talk about it here on the show. I think it'd be great. So yes, we will get in. He goes, hang on, warning, the movie is going to make you cry. Just the preview does that.
Yeah. Have you seen the trailer for it?
Oh my God, yeah, I have. Absolutely.
Yeah. It is definitely going to be one of those.
Bye, Thomas. Thomas is going to football game.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be like, I think it's going to be, if it's done right, if it's done as well as it looks like it could be the next Iron Giant as far as, And so,
that's a tall order. I remember Iron Giant was something special, bro.
Right.
That was something special.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's I think what they're going for is the heartstrings sentimental story. But anyway, back on track.
No, real quick off track for 2 more seconds. I will be just to pre-sell my own stuff. I will be dropping a review of the new Christopher Reeve documentary today.
Okay. You went and saw that?
Right after this show, we're going to see it.
Oh, okay.
Me and Mrs. Know-It-All are going to go watch it, and I'll be doing a review of that. I love Superman. I love Chris Reeves. I fully intend to. I'm sure I'll be like crying my eyes out during the movie.
I'm not going to go to theaters to see that, and I'll tell you, I do love the old Superman movies. I think that the original, especially have you seen the Donner cut of Superman 2?
Yeah, absolutely.
So much better.
100%.
But except for the fact that they repeat the ending because they recut the ending when they fired him for Superman the movie. But if I really do like those movies, I think that they really captured Superman as his personality was best encapsulated by Christopher Reeve's performance in those first 2 films. But I think people have made too big a deal out of Christopher Reeve himself. Because of his tragic accident and stuff that it's. I mean, yes, what happened to him?
You, man.
Huh?
Who hurt you? The guy embodied something and then got hurt and still embodied that something. That's what this is about. Don't you defame. Look, you can talk about Jesus, but don't you talk about Christopher Reeves. Come on.
And Creep, so she had to have some knowledge of the multiverse before she went crazy in WandaVision. Her make-believe family turned out to be real, not just for her. Well, that could be that her make-believe family was influenced by her dreams, and she may not have known that her dreams were actually looking into other variants.
Correct. I agree with you 100%. I back that up, no notes.
Yeah.
And real fast to Stanley, that's already in the works. The Vatican's working on it now.
Deify Robert Downey Jr.
He will be Saint Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. Patron saint of suits of armor.
Of comic book moviedom.
Well, no, suits of armor because he's playing
Totally.
Iron Man and Doom, both known for their armor.
I hadn't even thought about that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Patron saints of armor. Yes.
Yeah.
Blacksmiths everywhere will have his seal on their stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Oh my God. No,
Yes.
and I do real quick to go back to what you were saying a minute ago. I do believe that Christopher Reeve has been sort of fictionalized. I don't want to ever sell short what he did in terms of using his situation after his accident to continue to.
Oh, I'm not saying that's a bad thing that he did that, but I think that here's the problem. It's like. Okay, I'm going to pick on someone that's beloved for a second.
Okay.
Michael J. Fox.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
So Michael J. Fox came down Parkinson's.
Yes.
And all of a sudden he became this big advocate for fetal stem cell research because it showed promise to help with Parkinson's. And everybody was calling him a hero for doing this. No, it's self-serving. The reason that he was doing it was because he had Parkinson's. Okay. Now, Christopher Reeve became a huge advocate for the disabled in general, and when he became a quadriplegic. Now, is that a good thing? Yes, it raises awareness and all that, but I'm not going to say it's this insanely heroic act for basically becoming an advocate for. It would be like if I suddenly started a channel just talking about the pains of MS. Well, I'm only doing it because I have MS. You know, it's.
I feel like, okay, I don't have a listen, and I'm not. This is not me. This is not a nerd fight. I'm not trying to get intentionally adversarial.
That's all right.
I feel like that's a very cynical approach. I hear you, by the way, and I'm understanding. I'm born an eternal optimist. My default is everything's positive and everything's good, and we'll figure it out. But I understand. I mean, I hear where you're coming from.
I just get tired of people being called heroes for doing good things. And not like, to me, a hero is someone who charges into a burning building to save someone, right? That's a hero.
Sure.
Okay. A person who is an advocate, that depending on the cause, of course, that could be a good thing, but I don't necessarily call it heroic. Just like, how heroic is it that, this person came out as gay? That's not heroic. That's just self-identifying what you actually are. Right? So, to me, heroic should involve an act of heroism.
I got you. That's fair. No, it's fair.
And again, I'm not trying to diss Christopher Reeve because I loved him as Superman and I appreciate him raising awareness for the disabled. But I'm not going to call him like people say, oh, there's a real life Superman. No, he's not. He's a guy who was a good guy from all appearances. But to call someone a real life Superman means that they were out there saving people. And he was not doing that. So
at the same time, I think that, on that ever so positive and uplifting note, I think the second show to talk about is The Penguin. So there was a question that I want to say, I think it was Josiah Flamel, it might have been Briggs, forgive me if I don't remember exactly who. Someone asked the question, who would have thought the Penguin would get a secondary character with his own show, and then also that they did the transgender switch on them in the cartoon, making him a woman, and transgender, that was whatever. The gender swap.
Yeah, it is. It's transitioning the gender from male to female.
That's fair. So, okay, so the first episode comes out. It is, and another person, I think it was Stan, said it's basically just your everyday gangster thing. Okay, yes and no, it is. I have never been a fan of the deconstruct your villain scenario, seeing where they came from. I know that comics did like Batman Year One, Batman Year Zero, Batman whatever, blah blah blah, and Teen Batman. I don't know, and it's always been, oh, how did they get to that point? And I even said in my review of this, the TV show Gotham
Best
actually
comment
focused
ever.
on what is it? Christopher Reeve should have been raising awareness on correctly riding a horse. Creep, you're a horrible human being, and I love you for it. So the original TV show Gotham that was on CW for a while sort of did this arc with the pseudo. He wasn't the Penguin at the time, or Penguin was used as an insult for this guy, and eventually he grew and became. So my whole thing is, what is Matt Reeves' version going to say that show didn't? Now, mind you, he's got the budget, and by the way, Colin Farrell's amazing in the show. Right. The guy, he disappeared.
Doubled down on the makeup. When they showed him naked?
Bro, all the little Harrys, I was like, oh my God, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
Like, you'd have thought, like, I've never seen fat suit technology that good.
Yeah.
And it looks amazing, and I'm blown away.
You look at them, dang it, they better win the Emmy for makeup. If they don't, there's a big problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that does not look like Colin Farrell at all.
No, it doesn't. So, okay, on its face, for me, unless you've watched it, yes, it is just another, and I even said in my review, it's Goodfellas meets The Sopranos meets any other gangster thing you want, meets Batman, whatever. And I feel like, and of course the comics and the other things have always had the Falcones, the Maronis, all this other stuff. And I felt like this one, showing him at this level, I thought was very interesting. He's literally just a guy who works their club outlet, which is how they get drops, which is the drug they do, out into the streets and stuff. And he doesn't have nearly the pull or the strength, the juice that you would think you should have. And then ultimately he goes to golly, the show starts unbelievable. Are we spoiling this?
Well, you already kind of have, so sure.
What are you talking about? Everything I've said is you can find in the trailers, more or less. But it's kind of ridiculous. I didn't expect it to kick into high gear so fast.
Right. And by the way, to answer Stanley, no, nobody complained about Billy D. Williams playing Harvey Dent because he is just so cool.
And by the way, there was an animated movie with where they brought that version of Harvey Dent. Not animated, the Lego Batman.
Yeah.
Billy D. Williams plays the voice of Harvey Dent.
They should have had him drinking Schlitz.
And in the comic, the Batman '89 comics, which continue the story after Return of or Batman Forever, the one with Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Yeah. It continues the Tim Burton version rather than going into the Schumacher versions. They do the entire Billy.
Oh, you're right. Colt 45. Yeah.
They do the entire Billy D. Williams arc as Two-Face, and it's him. So that iteration does exist in the ether somewhere. It's just we didn't get to see it again on film.
So this to me is what the show Gotham should have been.
I agree.
Now I would like to see Jeffrey Wright make an appearance as Gordon. I wouldn't even be upset about Robert Pattinson making a cameo as Bruce Wayne. Yeah.
And the other thing is you can get Batman without Batman.
Right.
You can get someone getting their butts kicked and it's a guy in a bat suit over there and he's like, we got to get it. And you can have tangentially Batman exist.
Right. Because Batman's not the main focus of the show. Penguin is.
But I did find it very interesting. So the show takes place about a week or two after the events because the news says
the water's still there.
The news says in the beginning it's the water's only starting to recede and there's been no sign of Batman since they showed the video of him helping. And my whole thing is he on some sort of because remember the premise of Batman was he was like, I'm vengeance, and to the point that people called him Vengeance. Nobody had called him Batman ever. And then to have Riddler be like, I'm vengeance, and he was like, he got to see firsthand, I created this. So I think what we're going to get is he has stepped out away for a few weeks and to figure out who and what his purpose is.
Right. Which we'll probably get the answer to when they make Batman 2.
Yes. which is supposed to be take place during the winter. And God, I would love if they found a way to do Mr. Freeze and do it well, like without corny campiness, but with genuine
Ice to
earnestness.
see you.
I hate you so much. But yeah, no, I've literally blocked that out of my mind. There's a cut of that movie floating around somewhere that I hear is actually amazing. So like apparently like Schumacher, the Schumacher cut is apparently really good and maintained a lot of the things that Tim Burton established, and Schumacher really did, and then the studios butchered it to make it the goofiness it was.
And Bradley, as far as when we're going to get a movie or show based on Batman that's not Bruce Wayne, probably never, because keep in mind that yes, to the comic book fans, they know Batman has gone through multiple iterations and all that, but to the normie, Bruce Wayne is Batman. Batman is Bruce Wayne. Period. You know, that's the entire. There's no discussion there. But
in fact, so that's kind of the truth. You're right. I've always, there's I told you, maybe I didn't. I think I told my wife. There's a comic book recently that came out where it's Batman and Bane having a conversation, and he's taken off his mask, so it's Bruce with sans the mask, and Bane's looking at him, and Bane goes, "No masks," and pulls his mask off, and Bruce puts his on. Because Batman is the face.
Right.
Wayne is the mask. So I'm with you 100%, Salty. What you just said, absolutely true.
Yeah.
The two things are absolutely the same thing. Oh my God, Stan, I love it. The plum one. Yeah, this, because he has, I thought it was a Maybach. Was it a Maserati? It might have been.
It was a Maserati. I checked.
Okay. Yeah. But I love the fact that it's plum colored, which I would have thought was more of a Joker color, but whatever.
Well, you know, the funny thing is that I had a Ford Escort that the color of it was royal plum. And that was an actual Ford color back then.
That's awesome.
It was very similar to the color of that Maserati.
Did it have a little flecks of glittery?
It did. It did, but it did not have gold trim.
That's awesome. That would have been great, though. No, I love that.
But yeah, and I actually really like that car. And it's like people. It's so funny because I would like go to work and I'd be driving this little purple car, right?
Oh God,
and I'd get out of the car and some dude, you know, with like a Camaro or something would park next to me and be laughing at me. I said, "Oh no, you see, my penis is huge, so I don't need your car." You know. So
all right, well,
yeah. But anyway.
Thank you, algorithm gods. Please promote us. Put advertising in the show. Really.
Oh,
no. Okay. What did you think of? So, as the show goes into it, he does something pretty. If you don't want to spoil every single thing, he does something pretty radical out the gate, and from there, he ends up meeting a young man who's trying to boost his rims. Which I was like, did they just give this kid the Jason Todd origin? Like why?
Kind of, yeah.
Why does he? And then Penguin takes him on as his lackey. It's like, is this the birth of the henchman? Like,
it's like I actually like that whole vibe, and you can also, you know, because you can make the argument that this kid is only a criminal because of Batman, you know.
Yeah.
And so,
that's interesting.
But the funny thing is watching Agatha and this show highlights to me where Warner Brothers went wrong, because they kept trying to make the DCEU more like the MCU. And the fact that I enjoyed Agatha and then 2 days later I enjoyed this.
Right.
And they're totally different tones, even though they're almost the exact same premise. Right? Both of them are about an antagonist from a prior iteration who's trying to basically rebuild after a catastrophic loss.
Yeah, you said that's a great observation. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so so it's basically, this is how you do the dark and gritty. This is how you do the light and fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's still going to be some horror elements in Agatha eventually that come out. Which
sure, but it's not going to be like this. Like you're not going to see, someone like cut someone's face off to torture him or something like you might see in Penguin.
Absolutely agree. What did you think of? What did you think of? Aside from the fact that he's totally cutting the Tony Soprano's angle, what did you think of his mom when we saw Oz's mom?
Oh, she was funny.
She was hilarious, and the fact that he's like,
Yeah, she reminded me.
and she's
and you won't get this, but most of the people in the audience will. She reminds me of a mean-spirited Mom O'Prey 5. And so for anybody that knows who I'm talking about, you know I'm right. She's a mean-spirited Mom O'Prey 5. And we'll just wait to see if anybody reacts to that. But the hopefully somebody does, or else
no, right on.
Yeah.
I love
Death by Rabies like that.
The other thing is, I thought that the daughter Sophia Falcone was an amazing character.
Yes.
And apparently, and we know there's going to be scenes of her in Arkham because they were in the trailer, so there are probably some flashbacks coming. And the crux. Oh my gosh, Clancy Brown as Salvatore Maroni. Marone, oh my gosh, I was like, Clancy Brown, he's a Batman alum as they get. He's been in all these iterations as voice actor and character. It's unreal. I'm excited to see more about what he ends up doing. To see him as that character, and of course, we get to see the intelligence that's behind the Penguin, because he's not just an opportunist guy with ambitions from the streets, though that is where he comes from. I love the fact that we actually get to see his plans at work. And it's diabolical the way he puts the Maronis against the Falcones. It really is, and it's unreal. And I'm like, how the heck did you like? It's smart, super smart. And of course, the use of Dolly Parton's 9 to 5,
which I have to admit, I was a little surprised that Dolly Parton was willing to let them.
Dude, I think I could just hear her. I think that'd be fun. I know it's gonna be good.
Well, bless your heart.
Totally.
No, I really like the show overall. It to me, it's Gotham meets The Sopranos,
and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I think it's better than either of those two shows.
Wow, good for you.
But so now I'm gonna pick on it for a second, because I have less negative things to say about this show than I did about Agatha. But the biggest problem I have with this. That I is the same problem I have with Agatha, or potential problem with Agatha. I'm
really?
not 100%. There's no hero.
See, but that's I said this to Mrs. Know-It-All. This is what Acolyte should have been.
Well, I agree.
Show me if you want me to see every villain is the hero of their story.
Right, but the Acolyte. Okay, so if we did the Acolyte properly, and the entire show was focused on the witches and the Sith and all that,
sure.
But the Jedi were just like the distant antagonists of the show, but they would occasionally pop in, right?
Right.
And that would make sense to me. This show in particular, and Agatha as well, there are no good guys on the periphery. I mean, sure, Batman is out there somewhere, but there's no indication that he's going to be in the show. This is about Oz versus the other gang lords.
Yeah, it's right. It's Penguin's rise to being he's becoming the Penguin who will eventually be a Rogues Gallery character.
Right. And if this were Penguin versus the Batman from Penguin's perspective, then at least there's Batman out there that I say is the hero character, but he's just not the focus of the show. To me, and this is just a pet peeve of mine. I've said it before. I don't like when a movie or series is basically just about evil. And I want there to be good in it. I want there to be someone that I can latch onto and root for. Right. And right now in Penguin, there's not a single character that I'm rooting for, even though it's an incredibly well-made show and very entertaining overall. And so, but I don't root for Oz. I know what kind of a guy he is. He's a killer. He's a drug lord. He's the worst kind of person there is.
Well, they try to give you some sympathy and showing how he came up and showing his mom.
Yeah, but you know what?
Simple way. I'm with you.
Jeffrey Dahmer had a bad childhood and then he ate people. Okay? So
Look, can you help when you're hungry?
I know, sandwich is a sandwich, but a manwich is a meal. But
Wow. Have you just been holding that in your pocket? Like what? That's you were just like, "Pah, ready that for you, sir."
yeah, but the problem is that I want like, so if Batman were around doing stuff, and like Penguin was like on the lookout for that, as opposed to just trying to manipulate the gang lords,
Right.
I would find it more interesting. If in Agatha we got some hint of a hero character. Now, the reason I withhold total judgment on Agatha is I'm hoping, even though I know it's unlikely, but I'm still hoping that in Agatha, maybe Agatha herself becomes a hero character by the end. Like this could be the origin of Agatha the Good Witch. But this is not going to be the origin of the good penguin.
No, of course not.
Because there is no good penguin.
The origin of the classy penguin.
Yeah.
So did you catch when he's at his mom's house and he puts on the old movie?
Yeah.
And it was one of those old style singers like you'd see with the single microphone and the dress and the gloves.
Well, and he talked to the kid about how the Falcones lived, and he said, "Wouldn't you love to live like that?"
And the thing is, like that's that singer on the thing. That's how they have always shown Penguin's club.
Right.
Penguin eventually has a nice club.
Right.
Like an upscale.
Penguin is an extremely sophisticated and crime boss.
Dude, when he gets, I want to see everyone's like, when's he going to get an umbrella? When's he going to get a suit? Bro, give me a monocle. Show me when he gets a monocle. That's when I'm like, oh, he's on his way. Okay, because that's what we're missing. We're missing monocle, top hat, umbrella. You give me those things by the end of this thing, Matt Reeves, take all my money.
So, Creep says that he used to dance at a club called Manwitches, and his name was Sloppy Joe.
Is this the... Oh my gosh, Josiah Flamel says to the Penguin, so the Penguin's just the Sopranos with Batman. Bring back the Sopranos without James Gandolfini. So I saw a meme this weekend. The meme was a shot from the show Penguin, and underneath it was some scene from The Sopranos where Edie Falco is sitting next to James Gandolfini at a movie theater, and she leans over and goes, "That's you." And I was like, "Oh my god, that's so great!" That was such a great visual gag.
Honestly, the funny thing is, Colin Farrell even looks kind of like a scarred up Tony Soprano.
And the only thing he's not doing is the voice, because Gandolfini has a very specific voice, and he's doing something very different. He's doing this weirdly non-regional New York-y Chicago blend,
right,
of some sort, what you'd expect.
Well, because they're trying not to nail down what city Gotham really is.
Well, we loosely know Gotham is supposed to be in Pennsylvania or something along those lines.
Well, the funny thing, and this is actually something that I think DC... I get, it goes all the way back to DC's origins back in the 30s, but DC has always had fictional cities. So the Flash is in Central City, Batman is in Gotham City, Superman is in Metropolis, whereas Marvel just sets it in the real world.
Right.
Except for evil countries they'll make up. So Latveria they make up for Dr. Doom's home. But
which is roughly somewhere in modern day Turkey.
Right. Well, that's because everything is somewhere in modern day Turkey. If you read the Bible, everything is somewhere in modern day Turkey when you get to the New Testament.
No, that's real.
Yeah, but anyway, so
but you notice in DC they still have those regular cities. So even though there's Gotham, they're still in New York. Even though there's Metropolis, they're still in New York. And so,
which makes no sense.
When they did the Amalgam comics, when they did the actual DC and Marvel meetup, I'll never forget, the Justice League was like, we're on a planet. It looks like Earth, but it's about 10% larger than Earth. And there's other places that fill those holes. And we start pointing out, There are cities and whole areas we don't know, like, where'd they come from. Like, it's apparently they're trying to say the reason DC has all those fictional cities is because it's bigger
Their
than
Earth
Marvel's
is a little bigger.
which is, and I was like, okay, you guys are having fun. That makes sense. That's a fun.
I just
comic
like,
book movie.
those old DC Marvel crossovers were so fun.
They were the best.
One of my
You could
personal
never get out of
favorites.
legal hell nowadays to do that.
Yeah, I don't remember which one it is, but I do have it downstairs somewhere. Spider-Man is swinging around in New York.
Yeah.
And then he sees Wonder Woman fighting some like bank robbers or something. and he literally, and this is like, the writing is so on point with Spider-Man's character. He's like, oh, look, it's Wonder Woman. Guess I'll help her out. It's funny. I've never run into her before. And just little things like that. Batman fights the Hulk in it, which was the dumbest fight in the whole thing, because Batman wins that fight. Although Hulk punches Superman into orbit. So yeah, it was fun. But yeah, and Stan, yeah, Gotham is just across the river / lake / bay or whatever from Metropolis in the Snyderverse.
It is the Snyderverse. You're absolutely correct.
This is not the Snyderverse. But in the Snyderverse, Gotham and Metropolis are right across.
They're Twin Cities.
Yeah, but in this, they
always thought was weird.
Yeah. Well, except that, okay, so the funny thing is that all this stuff is like East Coast, but there's a perfect way to do that. San Francisco and Oakland you can see one city from the other. And so a lot of people don't realize they're right across the bay from each other. Right. And there's literally, it's called the Oakland Bay Bridge, a bridge that literally goes from downtown Oakland to downtown San Francisco. And so they're that close to each other. They are definitely as close as Gotham and Metropolis are portrayed to be in Batman v Superman. And then Doomsday landed on that island. What's in the bay in between Oakland and San Francisco? Oh yeah, Alcatraz. There's no need to fictionalize it all. You have Superman in San Francisco, you have Batman in Oakland, problem solved. But the reason they don't want to do that is because Gotham is known as the crappiest city on the planet, because Batman can never get the crime problem taken care of because of all the weird psychos that keep showing up. But yeah, I want there to be a hero. And so with Agatha, I think there might be. With this show, there definitely is not.
Yeah, but that's become sort of a norm in terms of a lot of these dramas. They don't. It's weird. They make it so that you're following characters in a story. It's like reading crime novels, that don't have necessarily, that aren't about a police officer. You know what I mean? It's like you're
No,
following,
I get that, and I know some people are into that.
Yeah.
I'm just not one of those people.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I'm still interested to see where this is going to go. So,
me too. And that's the funny thing, because usually, like I will tell you, The Godfather, I've never gotten through it. I've tried several times to watch it. I couldn't get through it.
So much. Yeah.
And, movies like Goodfellas, I can appreciate the cinematography and the acting and all that. But, these movies to me are not that good. Now, I did really enjoy The Usual Suspects. But the Usual Suspects actually mostly takes place in a police interrogation room and tells the story through flashbacks. So the setup is there. But when we get to and The Sopranos, I didn't care for the show overall. I don't like things that just simply glorify the dark side. Even though I know a lot of people enjoy it, I'm not judging. If you do, don't take this the wrong way. That being said, this is the first gangster crime show where after one episode I'm like, okay, I'm in. I want to see where this is going.
I think for me it's because they're so cartoonish in some ways. Yeah. Because I feel like the Falcones, none of them. I want to know, who are all these Midwest actors who are supposed to be Italian Guidos? None of it makes sense to me. Like, I think the guy who's playing like the consigliere guy character, Mark, whatever his name is, the guy who's there who tells Oz he's fired.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know that he's. I think he's like German or something. Like he comes from a weirdly bad. I'm sitting here going, why try to do this and have the tone pitch perfect, only to have a whole bunch of non-Italian anything. Whereas the daughter and the son, those people are both Italian and whatnot, and there's some other folks who are, but that's the same thing though with Mark Strong isn't either, and he's going to play Falcone in this in a flashback as far as I know, because they recast John Turturro who wasn't available.
That's too bad they couldn't get John Turturro. He was good.
It was just it's just scheduling. You got to do your thing. So anyway.
And Stan asking is at the ring at the table. That scene at the table does involve the ring, and that is a pivotal scene in this episode.
Pivotal.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's what sets up everything.
It really does. Like,
yeah.
And when it finally happens, I remember I was like, did you see that coming?
That ring is important in not one, not two, but 3 scenes in this movie.
It's literally Chekhov's ring, and I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
When they first introduced it, I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
I figured it was just something to show off, and then it becomes a thing, and you're like, oh my gosh, who knew?
But like in the one scene with the finger missing, the midway through, you remember with the car crash and the missing finger?
Yeah.
And of course the opening scene with the kid bragging on it.
Right.
And of course the scene where he confronts what's his name from Highlander. So he's like, there could be only one ring.
I hate you so much.
So
what I love is he's also gotten to this point where he's like, yeah, the hair I'm going to have is the hair I'm going to have. Because this is the same hairdo he has in The Boys spinoff when he plays the dean of the superhero college.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you're like, I'm Clancy Brown now. You're hiring me because of my voice and not exactly what I look like. Let's go. I was like, all right, brother. All right, you're good.
This is what I look like. Take it or leave it.
He's reached like Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2. Denzel's like, you know what? Even people in ancient Rome sounded like me. Sounded like, okay. Who's going to argue with you?
I will. I will definitely argue with him when Gladiator 2 comes out. I have a bad feeling about that movie.
The fact that they're already he's already said he's writing and working on Gladiator 3. And I'm like, why?
Because Ridley wants to compete with James Cameron, I think.
Nobody can compete with Jimmy Cameron.
Jimmy Cameron? I didn't know you were so close.
We're like
with him.
this. I'm kidding. I know nothing. No, I just mess around. But
Jimmy Cameron is the most overrated filmmaker in Hollywood.
Who?
James Cameron.
Okay, you have the same number of billion-dollar movies. You can call yourself yeah. Okay.
I'm not saying he's not a good filmmaker.
No, I'm not saying he's a good filmmaker either. What I'm saying is when you have multiple billion-dollar movies under your personal belt, not a studio's belt.
I understand.
No, man.
Hey, the Russo brothers.
The Russo brothers have 2.
3.
Which one? Which was the third? Captain America? Did Captain America break? Or did,
I thought Civil War did.
It might have broke. I didn't think it did. It might have.
But arguably the 3 best Marvel movies were all the Russo brothers.
Yeah, but at the same time, and notice they just brought them back again because the hopes of doing something.
Yeah.
Does that make them overrated? I don't know.
Winter Soldier was not the Russo brothers. Civil War was.
I thought it was. It wasn't. Civil War was.
Maybe it was.
Was it Civil War though?
Civil War definitely was them.
Okay,
Civil War is what got them the gig for Infinity War. Because once they saw what they could do with Civil War, they were like, okay, can you do that times 10?
Yeah, no. That's no offense. Everybody is surrounding this. Yeah, he says Gray Man was terrible. He's probably right. The one thing I realize is all these things that surround them are like everybody. Because even Robert Downey Jr. only finally got success in Oppenheimer, but he's been in several things that have all done poorly. That Dr. Dolittle movie tanked. The one he did where he's a lawyer and he plays essentially, I think either in some sort of a family situation, that movie tanked. Like, he's not done well until now, the Oppenheimer movie. So he only does well in this context. Evan, what do you call it? Not Ethan. Sorry, Captain America. He can't. Chris Evans. Mm-hmm. He can't make anything successful to save his life outside of the MCU right now.
Oh yeah, but that's the problem with being one of the big names in the MCU. Is that it's kind of like with the Star Trek thing. If you see Chris Evans in anything right now, you see Captain America. You know, that's what made Johnny Storm in Deadpool and Wolverine so funny. Was that we got to hear Captain America cuss like a sailor.
Yes. Oh, God, I didn't mean that at all. Sorry, that was an accident. So Stanley says James Cameron actually writes and directs all his films, and then he proceeds to do like I do and says, give Jimmy some credit.
No, okay, so you want me to give Jimmy some credit? All right. How many times can we remake Dances with Wolves?
As many times as it takes.
You know, James Cameron, look, again, he's a very talented filmmaker. I'm not saying he's not. But his films are, for the most part, unoriginal, uninspired, but incredibly spectacularly beautiful to look at.
So here's the one thing I will say in counter.
And in fact, T2, I think, is the most overrated film in freaking history.
We talked about it. There's this video in the real quick. However, the one thing I can say, and again, this goes into the, are you sure he's over here? You may not, this may be, hold on. Because clearly,
right now,
clearly we need to have this conversation. When you have not only multiple, more billion-dollar franchises under your personal belt that you wrote, that you not just directed, but actually wrote, produced, were involved the whole 9 yards in. Mm-hmm. As iconic of a playbook as he's had, plus, from a technical standpoint, more new technology that has helped mold today's cinematic experience has come from his movies than any single filmmaker in Hollywood. That, I don't know if you're overrated at that point. At that point, I think the hype is real.
Because at this time, but at this point, 4 times, James Cameron has made the most expensive movie ever made. Hold on. It's easy to be innovative when you get a blank check to make your innovative movie. Okay? Because you know why T2?
Innovative?
Huh?
Do you know why we didn't get an Avatar movie for 12 some odd, or how many years it's been since the first one? Because he insisted on waiting till he was like, no.
Avatar 2 was not that great. I don't know why people are singing the praises of Avatar 2.
Don't put words in my mouth. I didn't say it was great. But they had to invent new technology before he was willing to go there.
What technology revolutionized filmmaking for Avatar 2?
Up until that point, motion capture underwater was impossible. There were 2 brand new camera designs, both having to do with LiDAR technology and a combination of actual motion capture technology. Both those technologies were invented for this.
Right.
Along with they used to.
But you know what? If somebody else had a $500 million budget and wanted to do motion capture underwater, the technology would have been developed for that film.
Hold on. Did you really just say, but if somebody else wanted to do the magical thing,
if they had the money, because nobody else had the money. Nobody else got the green light.
Nobody else had the money to do the thing, so we're going to just say it would have happened.
If somebody...
You're literally arguing with nothing. The argument you have is in my hand right now.
No, because... No, absolutely not. Because did James Cameron himself invent the technology? The answer is no. He
oversaw the teams that did.
Yes, but you know what? I could have oversaw the teams that did.
Weta Designs alone and came up with over 40 patents just in working on the
right. But you know what? If George Lucas went to Weta 6 years before Avatar 2 and said, I want to do an underwater Jedi movie and I need to do motion capture underwater, and Weta said, give us, $800 million, we'll develop it for you, and they do it, it would have been George Lucas. It's not special to James Cameron.
He did that. It was the reason it's special to James Cameron is because nobody else has done it yet. So while your argument might be...
And the movie sucked.
Only one person is doing it, and that's this guy. I don't know about you, but that doesn't mean he's overrated. That means he's actually.
I think he's overrated because people make it out like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the movies weren't financially successful. I'm not saying they're not, crowd pleasing.
And on the other side, I'm not saying that the movies, quote unquote, are good, groundbreaking stories or narratively satisfying. Trust me, I'm with you in that respect.
But that's what I'm talking about. I'm saying everybody talks about the spectacle of these films.
That's because that's part of the filmmaking. You can't it's almost like people who like to take all the metrics from, I used to work in radio and television directly, and both of those medias, they're like, we're number one with one-legged women in houses of 2.5 people with an income of $5,000. You can filter it all you want.
Oh, I know.
Filmmaker, it involves all of it. The man writes, the man directs, and yes, even if he's given a blank check, it's because of the successes he's had.
But hold on, and you know this. He's not, by a long shot, the only writer-director out there that's made good movies.
Of course,
right?
Of course.
All right, so heck, Sylvester Stallone has done it multiple times.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
All the guys, Francis Ford Coppola,
there are lots of guys that have done that. Now, granted, is it a rare subset of skills to have? Absolutely. Heck, Rian Johnson can write and direct. It was just a horrible mistake to put him in the Star Wars franchise. But so
you're right.
Rian Johnson was a great filmmaker. He was just in the wrong place.
Because subversion.
Yeah. Because Dark Force butthole. But so he has that skill set, which is great. But when, Terminator 2 completely, and not just because it's a sequel, but it's a completely derivative of Terminator. It's the same story, just with a couple of characters switched around. And
I hate you so much. Stanley goes, based on what? His only good movie was Looper. And you were on my side until now. Get out.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard Knives Out is actually really good.
No, the original was excellent. The second felt like he was swinging way too wide, and I don't know how I'm going to feel about the third. We'll see the third when it comes out.
Yeah. But being a talented writer-director, that is a wonderful set of skills to have, and James Cameron certainly fits in that. But his writing is his weakness, because his directing, I will not fault. As far as I will totally say, yes, his movies are visual spectacles. If you look at Titanic, the fact that they built a 1/3 scale Titanic to sink it, but that's the kind of thing. You give somebody unlimited money and they can do that, right?
Hold on, but here's my problem with that thought process. One, understand something. We're in a show called Nerd Fights. I'm going to say some things that might be inflammatory. You say that because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And here's what I mean.
I do know what I'm talking about.
Listen. Here's what I mean by that. I'm not talking you're not entitled to an opinion and you don't know stuff academically. The idea that there's such and such so much money. Hollywood has actually proven, if you look at the numbers, the opposite. There's more failures of directors that have been given tons of money than there are successes.
Oh,
so
sure.
Not only is he lumped in as an excellent filmmaker, an excellent blah, 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 storyteller, writer, director, the whole bit, special effects development, everything I'm saying, he also does something which is use and utilize that amount of money,
right,
and then give you a massive return.
But let me compare him to someone else real quick.
Sure.
George Lucas. All right.
Okay.
So George Lucas, with the Star Wars prequels in particular, made visually stunning for their day films that were very weak on story. Now, the only reason that the Star Wars sequels or prequels got annihilated by fans was because it would be like if you made a subpar Star Trek. You're going to get, the sci-fi fans of a pre-existing franchise are going to rail you, right?
Sure.
But George Lucas can make visual spectacular on screen all day. He can't write worth a crap. And this is where James Cameron's better than George. George can't direct people.
That's true.
Okay. Now, James Cameron can direct and he can create the spectacle, but he can't write worth a crap. And what I'm saying is, sure, he can write dialogue, he can make a scene flow, but Titanic is the most cliche story ever put on film. Avatar is.
I cried when Celine Dion sung.
Okay, Danny, but the Avatar.
Danny, I love you. Happy birthday, sir. I love you.
Avatar is literally just Dances with Wolves, but the Indians are blue.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
Right.
You'll never get an argument from me about that. I agree 100%.
And Terminator 2 is a rehash of Terminator. Now,
and really kind of a bad attempt, as we discussed, to sort of recapture that aliens magic, and it just sort of didn't land right.
Right.
I'm with you.
So I'm not saying he's a bad director. I'm saying he's overrated because people think that his movies are so freaking awesome. No, his visuals are so freaking awesome. And he's a good director, so you believe the characters in their places.
So I'm just gonna pause right there for a second. So he's not so freaking awesome, but his visuals are so freaking awesome. So what is the curve? What is the
if somebody else wrote for him,
subjective yada 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 that would let you? Because to me, I almost feel like that's. Are you gonna okay? That needs to be your next video essay. You need to go through and categorically figure out Cameron without going to the minutia, because it's gonna be 100 videos of figure. Because I need to because here's my problem. My problem is you're trying to parse everything into pieces and bits, where I'm sitting here going, look, yes, there are areas he's weak, this and that, but if you look overall, nobody's got the whole package. Your argument to me is, what if you threw money at them? But there's been tons of movies that people have thrown money at them.
But that's part of the problem, though, what you just said. You're right. Nobody has the whole package. And that's why film should be a collaborative art form. That's why film is at its best when you have a great writer writing a screenplay for a great director.
Okay.
As opposed to, I think that we're in this age where everybody wants to be a writer-director, where they want to write their own passion project and direct it. And the problem is you can't do that with an unbiased eye. You're going, and that's why, when people say, oh, this is like a fan film, think about what's wrong with fan films. What's wrong with fan films is usually the writing. It's more than the directing.
Yeah, a little bit of both, because I think sometimes the issue is
they're usually unprofessional as far as they're amateur films.
Right.
But I'm saying, like, when you look at what makes them feel like a fan film, it's because the writing is done to where only the person that wrote it really loves it. Okay. And I think James Cameron loves Titanic. I think he thinks that Avatar was an incredibly brilliant story about saving the environment and stuff, when it's like, I think he forgot that he had seen Dances with Wolves and was inspired by it.
Josiah Flamel film can be lazy.
Yeah, but you know what? Avatar's lazy. I'm sorry. As far as the writing side of it, Avatar is every checkbox there is. Evil corporation, unfreaking-tanium, all right? Primitive people equals good, right? All these are just old school tropes, right? And then ultimately, white savior. And so this is all tropes.
Okay.
It's all
I'm with you. I don't have an argument for that.
I mean, it's Last Samurai. It's Dances with Wolves. It's
Last Samurai.
By the way, Last Samurai I think was a better film than Dances with Wolves. I
love the scene where he gets knocked out and keeps getting up. Yeah. That was great.
I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying these films are always bad. But I'm saying that I'm not going to say, oh, what an incredible masterpiece of writing, when they're just telling the same basic story but changing, the superficial stuff. So we went from the Old West to feudal Japan to the planet Pandora. But we're telling the same story.
Right.
We're telling the story of white people coming in and exploiting, and one of them betrays his fellow white people and leads the primitives against them.
Betrays his fellow white people.
Well, I'm just saying. But all three of them are good movies as far as movies go. Just like, hey, you know what? I love The Seven Samurai. I love The Magnificent Seven, but my favorite version is still Battle Beyond the Stars. And if you haven't seen Battle Beyond the Stars...
Really?
I love Battle Beyond the Stars.
I haven't got a chance to watch it all the way through, not because I didn't mean to. It's just I got interrupted.
And James Cameron worked on that film.
He did. He's the guy that invented he invented the lunchbox walls.
Yeah.
He took foam boxes because they needed to make the walls a certain way. Anyway,
but yeah, that was James Cameron's first film, I believe. And James Horner did the soundtrack for that. Would I have liked Avatar if it had some nude scenes?
Clearly,
you mean a cartoon blue boobs?
Robert Meyer Burnett. So he's never had a problem with that part.
I always thought how funny it was how on Zoe Saldana's character, what she's wearing is like glued to her nipples.
Or somehow, if it's not, like if it goes over her shoulder, her arm is up here.
Yeah.
And they're always playing with the placement.
And I just think that's tacky, to be honest.
The problem is, but they've never made it. It never looks. We're looking for it. But it never looks awkward the way the
yeah, but they shouldn't be showing so much that we're looking for it. You know what I mean?
It's so obvious. Well,
because they purposely make it to they purposely
look at that Geo special.
Yeah, they purposely make it so that it just covers enough to keep it PG-13.
So after talking about both Agatha and now Penguin, clearly,
and blue boobs.
I think it's time to let's kind of shift into let's open the floor up a little bit and have some conversation like we already clearly are doing.
Yes.
All
right. So, what would you rather watch? Zoe Saldana, except done realistically in Avatar, where the stuff is flopping around, or more of Luke Skywalker drinking that milk?
Why would you do that? Well, clearly Avatar. I'll watch that all day.
Yeah.
Give me that. Give me more of that. Because right now, apparently, we're going to be getting Sigourney Weaver playing a teenager in the next 3 Avatar movies.
I love Sigourney Weaver, but come on. This is and that's another thing about Way of Water that I thought was so stupid. It's like, oh, well, we have a magic baby that came out of a corpse, and it happens to sound just like Mom. And, oh, look, we just happen to have a clone of the old guy that everybody loved from the last movie, except now he's blue, because why not? And, it's like, just bring in new characters. If you kill somebody off, you don't need to come up with some contrived way to bring him back.
Here's my problem. It's easy for me to, as someone who's been in the business, to look at something like, and again, I go to the paragon of horribleness because, frankly, it's the most glaring offender of this. The Acolyte. Mm-hmm. Acolyte was bad on so many script, narrative, literal technical levels that I never even got to whatever the woke nonsense other people complain about. But I consider and say, okay, technically they did some good things, but there's not enough good things that outweigh the bad things in your let's use subjective, objective, whatever concept idea. Okay, the bad things far outweigh anything good that's going on screen. So then you go to something like I don't see those issues. Do I see issues with the story? Of course, the story's a bit clunky. But at the same time, it's no more clunky than some other things that are also equally successful. Because I'm sorry, if you really look at it on its face, Civil War is clunky as hell. It really is. So is Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Baron Zemo's plan makes no sense. I'm the first.
100%. Yeah. His plan depends on so much luck. That and hopefully that'll happen.
But on the flip side,
on his analysis of their personal.
Do you know whose plan was worse than Baron Zemo's?
Who?
Joker in The Dark Knight. I get so fed up with people saying how The Dark Knight was this brilliant film, But if you try to break down what the Joker's plan was, and don't give me this, well, he says, I don't make plans. Yes, he did. He planted explosives on 2 boats. He planted a bomb in a guy's gut. He did all this stuff, not to mention rigged 2 warehouses to explode. He did all this stuff. He was planning this stuff out months, if not years in advance, in order to get all this stuff synced up. Think about this. He had to time it so that he would be interrogated at the exact time that would be the right amount of time for Batman to be able to drive to one but not both locations to rescue someone. How do you arrange that?
Okay.
Well, but everybody says how Dark Knight is such a brilliant film. I think Dark Knight is a good movie, but
I look. There's a difference between genuine criticism and somewhere feeling like an armchair quarterbacking. I can talk as much crap as I want during Sunday football. I could never be on the field telling them what to do or any stretch of the imagination. I've worked on a pilot. I've worked on 2 TV pilots,
right,
and developed several other shows, and it sucked, and it was no clue what I was doing each time. And the second time I thought, well, clearly I have the problems from the first one figured out. That was a lie. I didn't, because
but the thing is, you can fix these things, and that's why you know this. When I do when I do start picking these things apart, I tend to try to offer, okay, here's how I would fix that, all right? And so with the Dark Knight, so first of all, as far as Harvey and what's her face, I can't remember her name for some reason, but them being trapped in the warehouse.
Rachel,
yes, thank you. It's a very simple fix. You just make it so that the bombs are triggered by them going into the warehouse. They're not on a timer at all. Joker just tells them they are.
Okay.
And so the bombs just go off when you go through the door, and Harvey happened to have knocked his chair over, so he survived the explosion.
Which I always thought was weird.
Yeah. And then, as far as the 2 ferry boats, I would cut that sequence out completely. I thought the ferry boats were stupid.
You mean you don't like tiny whatever you're talking about? Give me that controller. I'll do the thing you should have done a long time ago. You don't like that moment?
No, because the convicted killers would have said, click. Okay? That was the most unrealistic moment in cinematic history right there when he threw that.
I don't know. It sounds like you're struggling with some personal issues.
So you think some hardcore?
I think that I go to the movies for escapism and to ultimately enjoy the narrative that I'm being told.
Yeah, but Christopher Nolan was trying to make.
Hang on, movies by their very nature, and this is one thing I always espouse, are the single most contrived form of storytelling, because what you're doing is you're taking an event, whatever the event, and you're only showing me the moments that matter to get us to that event.
Right.
You're not showing me any of the extras, any of the space. You're cutting out all the white space so that all I have are the beats that mattered, when in real life, nothing happens like that. In real life, there's hours of minutia and boring and nonsense before you get to the good bits, if you will. And I feel so when people try to sit here and start attacking that type of thing, I'm sitting here going, you know what? Yeah, movies are contrived, of course. I go to the movie to see the movie. I'm willing to. Now, there are times that I sit here and go, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to chalk that up to my suspension of disbelief. Got it. Okay. And there's other times when you don't have to do that. But
sure,
it doesn't mean that if you overall package the thing and do something that is entertaining, I'm down, I'm here for it. Right. I thought there were many, many storytelling beats in Way of Water that worked for me. By that, I don't mean the story. The story overall, like you said, literally the recycled version of the same story. No lessons were learned by humanity. You've reset everything and brought us back to one. Fine. Yeah. But the new connection to the whale folk creatures and how they carry the history and all those elements. I thought those were really
The
good.
lore was
The
interesting.
lore was the world building is very full, and I find myself enjoying. And that's really, I think, what I go to the Avatar films for, is the lore building more than the individual events. Because frankly, you're right, the events are sort of trite and a little silly. The fact that now we're dealing with Avatar clone version of the Marines who got killed, I don't know so much that I'm worried about. Show me new characters, as much as I'm like, that just feels lazy, and you just doubled the budget for those kind of, why? What's the point? Like, what is achieved?
Well, the point was everybody liked that guy.
What is achieved by this? What have you actually in story solved? Because even the act of doing it is expensive because they're still using money, clearly. So it's like, I don't know.
Right. And I'm not arguing that they need to show us every little piece of minutia, just so, like what Bradley's comment there and others have said.
Sure.
That's not what I'm arguing. I understand that from a storytelling perspective, you cut down to the essentials.
Sure.
You don't need to, like, in fact, that's what could be hilarious about some bad movies, is they don't cut that stuff out. And so, like, if you watch movies like Birdemic, which, by the way, hilarious movie. Have you ever seen Birdemic?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so
It's an amazingly bad movie.
yes, and so like the opening credits alone show a guy driving from one place to another. We see the entire drive. We don't need to see the entire drive. There could have been a 10-second scene that was like 5 minutes long.
Okay.
So, you know, I get that, but.
Right.
But what I'm talking about, the reason that Dark Knight irked me so much wasn't that I thought Dark Knight was a bad movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. When I first went to see it, I found it very entertaining. Overall, a solid Batman movie. However, as the days and the weeks and the months went on, people started talking about how this was the greatest superhero movie ever made. And then, oh, this is one of the greatest movies ever made. And oh, what a genius Christopher Nolan is. And how, you know, Heath Ledger, and it's tragic that Heath Ledger ended himself after this movie.
Sure. Yes.
but-
Yes.
Yeah, but the Heath Ledger's version of the Joker was so inspired and so awesome, and just all this stuff. And it's like, okay, did you watch the same movie I did? Because I thought it was a good movie, but I didn't think it was that good.
Okay, look, here's the thing. So what? And by that I just mean, what about anybody having that philosophy bothers you that much? Not to mention the fact that Stan just had Stan tried to make two comparisons here. By the way, unsubstantiated comparisons, because in my opinion, it's too easy to say what you just came out of your mouth, and it's too easy for him to say this, because at the end of the day, I'm going to buckle down and go, what are you talking about? Because I'm sorry, here's the one thing I'll just use Heath Ledger, and I will just use Jack Nicholson. Both characters are diametrically different, yet ultimately doing the same thing. But the diametrically different part is, with Nicholson's, you get an origin, you understand motivation, and you sort of get to some place. But guess what? He doesn't make any sense either. He doesn't want to be a criminal. He just wants to kill people. He just wants to and Batman's getting in the way.
Right.
So I'm sorry. Now let's pause. Go to Ledger. Ledger, closer to the comic book version in that you don't know his origin.
Right.
You don't know where he came from. He is, relatively speaking, as unreliable a narrator as you could possibly get. I would argue the most faithful adaptation of the Joker to date, because the true Joker never has had an origin. Don't talk to me about the pseudo origins that are in some of the things, because those things have always been like One Bad Night and all those things. Those things have always been the last joke or whatever.
Right.
There are always variations on the theme, but at its core, we don't know the Joker's origin. And him being an agent of chaos, well, he's there and he shows up, and they establish why he exists in the first movie, which is escalation. That moment when they're on the roof and dude outlines for Batman, you get guns, you get this and that, you body armor, this and that, and escalation. That to me was a beautiful.
That was a great scene. By the way, that's what I think. Batman Begins is probably the best Batman solo film ever made. I really like Batman Begins. Now, The Batman I thought was good. I thought it was really solid. I think the best Batman we've ever seen, though, is Ben Affleck, which unfortunately he never got a solo film.
Absolutely, the most truest, I believe, as well, was him. I would have loved. I thought he was a little buffer than I wanted, but at the same time, it's like whatever.
Yeah, but that's Batman. Batman's supposed to be that buff.
He's supposed to be the like pinnacle of human.
Yeah,
whatever.
because
I get it. I do get it.
yeah, Batman is
Batman should be muscular. Superman should actually look like an average Joe.
Right, but Batman is supposed to be basically the DC equivalent of Captain America as far as physical condition. He is as close to perfection as a human can possibly get.
Agreed.
And I think the problem that we run into, though, is that with Joker in particular, if you're going to use the Joker, I think that it's a mistake to have him do complicated plans. Because when you do, then he's no longer the Joker.
Well, I think you're right. I think the comics have always established long on the Joker's only raison d'etre. The only reason he exists is to poke Batman in the eye again and again and again, get a rise out of him. He has a psychotic attachment to Batman. He exists because Batman exists.
Right.
Like whatever.
And that's where the end of Batman Begins was so genius.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
Is the idea of escalation and the natural recourse of escalation. Batman is the embodiment of order, and Joker is the embodiment of chaos. But what people confuse is chaos with anarchy. Joker is intentionally causing chaos. He's not just randomly doing stuff.
Right. He's not. Anarchy is just sort of lawlessness, whereas chaos is a very specific set of events.
Right. And so Joker, and so that's where, like, if with a little bit of tweaking, Heath Ledger's Joker, that story could have made more sense if they showed that he was intentionally trying to make people think he was doing random things, as opposed to, but they actually played it up like he really is just doing random things, and. I didn't think, but his plan was also completely impossible. But you're right. The reason for Joker's existence is to poke Batman in the eye, and so if that's the reason for his existence, that makes it even more difficult for Batman, because how is he going to figure out what Joker's next caper is going to be when his next caper is just going to be whatever's going to annoy Batman?
Caper. Next time on Batman, the Joker's next caper.
Hey, the kids love capers, okay?
I love that so much. I think your age is showing. It's all good. It's all good. I love that era, but I'm just saying. It's like
Today's episode of Nerd Fights is brought to you by Capers, the new salty snack.
That's awesome. Love those capers.
All the kids are going crazy for capers.
This has been an amazing and fun episode. I actually do like when we get heated. I love it because you're a very intelligent person to talk to. It's one of the reasons why I think this chemistry works as well as it does.
You know, you need to create another slide, like, you know, you have the flaming one. You should have a slide that comes up with someone like moving in to kiss someone's butt whenever you're going to say that.
Totally, a little graphic. That's something.
Yeah.
So here we go. It's so funny. Name dropping. Michael and Laura Reloaded are going to box for $1 million.
I would do it. I would get in the ring with Laura Reloaded for $1 million.
Would watch that.
Yes.
I would happily referee that.
I'd get in the ring against Mr. Know-It-All for $1 million. Now, granted, Mr. Know-It-All would crush me because he'd just step on me and squish me like a bug.
So shockingly, if you've seen the picture, we're very close in height. Like,
you're a few inches taller than me.
No, absolutely. But I mean, when I was watching the picture, I was like, "Good Lord, you really are a big guy."
I tried to tell you. Everybody thinks I'm a hobbit. No, and the funny thing is,
I think troll would be more. No, I'm kidding. No, that's a double entendre. But
now that I have the beard, you know, people compare me to a dwarf.
Yeah, Stan goes, both are taller than Anson Mount.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, because Anson Mount's bio says he's as tall as me.
So I'm standing next to Anson Mount like this.
Yeah.
Understand? I'm like, hey, it's him. Okay, like he's way too short.
I'm trying to remember. You sent. No, that's you. Did you send the picture to my email?
No, I thought it said to your phone.
Oh, okay. That's why I don't see it here.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the picture, but of course,
It's so much easier to send that way. I apologize.
jerk.
What I'll do is I'll make the picture part of a slideshow sometimes. We can be like, stuff. All right. Well,
Oh, no, I got it here. I got it here. So, zoom in.
You are having great hair. True story. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Hold on.
What are you doing? You trying to get the picture up? Are you really?
There.
Really? It's so tiny. I'm looking down at the picture right now. It's so little.
But yeah, so look at Anson Mount in the middle. He's clearly shorter than me.
Look at the smile coming out of the shadow in the corner. That's that's how dark the picture is. You can barely see me. I'm like, I should have smiled bigger.
I think that's your monitor. I can see you just fine.
Oh, okay, maybe it's my monitor. I look super like, what the heck?
But yeah, but yeah, Mr. Know-It-All, you look like you're just like gonna kill somebody.
We're just like, it's a fruit.
So it should be lined up, you next to me, next to Anson, next to Mrs. Know-It-All, then my wife, so we can all make and it'll almost be like a perfect line of height difference.
Totally.
But yeah, I mean, but Anson, he's not that tall. He's not 6'1", not even with the hair.
And seeing him and Ethan Peck standing next to each other, Ethan Peck looks bigger than him.
Yeah.
Not just height-wise, but like...
Ethan Peck is in shape.
You guys are doing clearly some work on those cameras when you're filming it, because you make Anson Mount look like he's the same size as Spock, and I'm sorry, he is not. Ethan Peck looked amazing. So, right on, man.
Yeah, he. You know what? I think he might be 6'1" in that Vulcan clip where his hair is spiked up.
Totally.
There, he's probably 6'1".
They measured him that day. He was like, measure me for Wikipedia right now.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, now it is true that most actors are physically smaller than they appear on screen, and that's partially because, unlike reality, you don't see us big fat people in movies. You know, like
fan films?
Huh?
Fan films?
Well, yeah, but I'm not talking about, these aren't fan films. In Hollywood productions, a fat person in a Hollywood movie is like 20 or 30 pounds overweight.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And that would be fat in Hollywood movies.
Yeah. And so the problem is that of the group photo here, the only one that could possibly be in a movie with Anson Mount would be my wife.
Oh my God, totally.
The rest of us are too big. And so you think that he's bigger than he really is because he's surrounded by, like, if you see the women from that show, they are microscopic. They had, unfortunately, the girl that played Ortega, so I was hoping she would be there, but she wasn't there. But they're all tiny. Jess Bush and...
very little. Very little.
I always mess up her name. The girl plays Uhura.
Hey, by the way, sidebar, just because we're taking up time. Give me access to your Patreon. I'll post that video on there for you, the one of the thing you missed. I'll just put it in there.
Okay. And, oh gosh, what is it? Sonequa Martin Green. All these women are just absolutely tiny. And so if you put Anson Mount next to Sonequa Martin Green, he looks like a big dude.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I was watching a little bit of Strange New Worlds the other day, and because of this weird distortion we get from the way that Hollywood casts, look at Spock, and he looks like he has man boobs. But he doesn't. He's just in really good shape. He has serious pecs. Right. And when you meet Ethan Peck, it's kind of funny his last name is Peck.
Definitely his arms are like
but you never see that on the show because he's always wearing the uniform sleeves.
Right.
And so you just see like the pecs kind of poke forward, and it makes it look like he has man boobs because the rest of the men don't have that.
You don't know nothing about man boobs. I'll tell you about man boobs.
No, you have man breastises.
I have moobs.
No, you have breastises.
Man boobs.
Man breastises.
All right, listen, guys. I'm going to talk to you later. Give me one last shout out to everybody that you're looking forward to seeing in the future.
Well, obviously, so we got the next episode of Penguin will air tomorrow.
Yeah. Is it tomorrow?
Yeah.
I thought it was the 29th.
Oh, you're right. So next Sunday.
Sunday. It shifts to Sunday next week.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have Agatha. So next week we'll only have Agatha to talk about.
Yeah.
So Agatha episode 3, which I am looking forward to, because I want to see where they're going with the Yellow Brick Road. And, and then we're coming